something that's huge. There are so many different ways of using skills. We're not all going to use it in the same way. We shouldn't all use it in the same way. And I don't exhaust the possibilities that are there in skills. I want to be upfront and clear about that. But when I do use skills, it is so helpful to me. You guys, I have a triannual IEP tomorrow morning bright and early. And I can tell you that I've been on skills, I've been looking around and using skills, and I will be on skills tonight, getting myself finished ready. But the amount of time that I have spent preparing for this triannual as opposed to the last triannual is crazy different, because I can streamline the process with skills and know that I'm being really effective for where my child is right now. So in any case, I do love me some skills. But today, I want to take a couple of minutes to talk with you about the cognition curriculum and skills. You guys have been writing in questions. You know about the advanced cognition program and skills. You've been asking about this. So I wanted to take a second to go through the cognition curriculum, and then we'll talk a little bit about what the advanced cognition program is. So cognition, just one of the 8 areas that skills covers. But this is a really important one. When people talk about what's the difference between a quality ABA program and one that's a little bit less than, one of the things that I include in that is that there have to be some lessons having to do with cognition, and not all ABA providers dealing with autism spend time in the cognition and executive functions curriculum. So let's take a look at what are we talking about when we talk about cognition. And I've got a couple of different slides here. Okay, we've got this wonderful wheel here, and on this wheel, all around it, we've got a bunch of different things. And I want you to think as we go around this wheel about how often in your day, in your personal day, do these things come into play? Talking about desires, what are the things that you're passionate about, the things that you want, the things that you're striving for, the things that you're working for? It could be as simple as, I'm thirsty and I want something to drink. What do I want to drink? I want ice cold water. I want room temperature water. I want hot water. I want something that's got sugar in it. I want something that's got aspartame in it. You know, do you like cola? This is like, honestly, you know, for people who go to restaurants, I see it all the time. I am not a soda drinker and I'm not a cola drinker, but the people that I know that drink Coke, they go to a restaurant and they ask them, you know, can I have a Coke? And they say, we carry Pepsi. And the look of sheer devastation that they are not going to be able to have the product that they want, they're going to have, and vice versa. You know, my friends that are Pepsi drinkers and they go someplace and it's like, oh, all they have are Coke products. We all have different things that we want. Knowing what those desires are and being able to claim them. When you think about what you want for your child, isn't desires right at the crux of it, that you want them to be able to want things and to seek them out and to be able to work towards those things? It's a basic human right, right? Then we get into emotions and being able to, and realize that in all of these things, there's 2 sides to the coin, right? There's knowing and understanding when we're having emotions, knowing and understanding when we're having desires, but knowing and understanding when somebody else is too, right? So understanding I'm feeling tired, understanding mom is feeling tired, understanding mom is feeling happy, understanding that I'm feeling sad, are really intense things that we want for our kids on the autism spectrum. For so many of you who have teenagers and say, my child doesn't feel empathy, I don't believe that for most of our kids that that's the truth, but if we haven't taught them emotions and something that comes a little bit later on, perspective taking, then they don't have a filter through which to put it. But when we teach our kids, we see very clearly, when we teach them emotions and what emotions are, and then we teach them perspective taking, they're able to put those things, and they're the most empathetic people that you will want to meet. They're very capable. We just have to give them the floor of opportunity, right? Moving on to senses, understanding the difference between I see it, I hear it, I touch it, I feel it. Understanding all of the different sensory things that come into play, because how many of our kids have sensory processing issues? And it's a lot. Being able to language that I'm seeing something and I'm feeling uncomfortable goes a long way. If you think about the tantrums that our kids have when they get to sensory overload, if they are able to language for themselves, and by language I mean internally, not necessarily say it out loud, but eventually to communicate to another person, I am overwhelmed. I had to learn this as an autism parent, when to say, I'm overwhelmed, I need to take a break, I need to stop right now because I am not in a good place. It took having a child with autism for me as an adult to be able to learn that. Because before, I would just get upset. Not that I don't now too, but I am capable now of saying, need to stop. Okay, understanding physical states. That we do need to understand when we are tired, when we are cold, when we are hot, when we are hungry, all of those things and ever so much more. When, if our tag in our shirt is starting to rub against and we're getting a rash there, understanding that we're having some pain there and it's coming through and it's a little bit overactive sensory wise, so that we can change something about the equation. Then we get into stuff that's a little bit more it's like stuff that you just can't quite get a finger on. It's more in the head, or what they call on the inside, thinking. What are you thinking? What am I thinking? Love the book. What is the name of it? Oh, I'm going to mess it up. Thinking about you, thinking about me. It's something along those lines. You know the book that I'm talking about. So that we understand that right now, all of us are thinking something. I'm speaking, but I'm thinking things in addition. When you help an individual who's on the autism spectrum to be able to understand that, they begin to understand the subtext of all the social cues that are happening around them. It is amazing. And that they have the power to change how they think so that they can help themselves to do the things that they want to do. Powerful, powerful stuff. Sensory perspective taking. If you think about many of you write in and ask, how do we begin to teach perspective taking? Well, the first thing that you do, you've taught senses, right? So that a child understands, I see that. That's what I'm doing. I'm seeing it with my eyeballs. Then we begin to understand sensory perspective taking. They put up a boundary and the child sits on one side and maybe a parent sits on the other side and the therapist is sitting there with them, and there's the barrier between them, and the therapist takes a lemon or something and they put it in front of the child and they say, what do you see? And the child says, I see the lemon. When we've gotten to that point, obviously there are many prerequisites before you get to that point. But the child says, I see the lemon. And they say, okay, can mom see the lemon? And in the beginning, the child goes, yeah, mom sees the lemon. And they take the child and walk the child around to be right by mom and say, look, can mom see the lemon? And the child goes, no. Where did the lemon go? And they walk them back around the barrier and go, where is the lemon? Can you see the lemon? Yes, I see the lemon. Can mom see the lemon? And the child walks back over and says, no, mom can't see the lemon. Why can't mom see the lemon? Because there's something in the way and mom's eyes can't see through it. It sounds like it's a ridiculous lesson, but when you see the light bulbs go off in a child's head when they get that, oh my gosh, it's game on, right? Because then we do this with a whole bunch of other things where the child is sitting in one room and there's a noise and they say, what do you hear? I hear the music playing. Mom's in the other room. Can she hear the music? And they got to think it through. I don't know. Let's go stand in the other room and see if mom can hear the music. Nope, she can't hear the music. And oh man, the connections start to get made for the kids. And it's the beginning of perspective taking, because if they can process what are the senses, well, can mom hear it? Can mom see it? Eventually we get to that very tenuous line of what's mom thinking? Is mom thinking the same thing that you're thinking? Probably not. And what goes into what is mom thinking? We move on to cause and effect. That when something happens, and this is a big set of lessons, and we start with it in a very small way that, what do we think will happen if I drive a truck over this pen, right? Well, the pen's probably gonna break, right? Moving into, well, what will happen if I throw a tantrum? So that the child begins to think through the consequences for themselves and this helps with safety. This helps with friendships. This helps with self-regulation, right? Okay, then we move on to preferences. And you might think, well, okay, wait a minute. What's the difference between the preferences and the desires? The desires are things really early on. I want juice. I want a cookie. I want, and we can build to when they're older about saying, I want to be a rocket engineer. I want to be on American Idol, whatever it is that the kid, I'm thinking about James Durbin, whatever it is that the kid wants to do, right? But then we get to talking about preferences, and preferences are things that we lean towards. That, maybe Beth is the therapist who comes, and every time she comes, she's wearing a red t-shirt. They're not the same red t-shirt, but she's always wearing red. Or there's Jackie, who likes black. You can tell because she dresses in black. Her hair is black, her earrings are black, she's wearing a black t-shirt, she's got black sneakers on. Jackie must really like black. When we get into this, we start talking about inferences. That if somebody wears black every single day, does that necessarily mean that they love black? It might, but it might not mean that they love black. So preferences help with a whole bunch of things. It helps for gift giving. I love to work on preferences, especially around the holidays, because we start to go through, what do you know? Here's your list of people that you're gonna buy a gift for. What do we know about them? What would be a good gift for them? And we start to figure out what preferences are. Okay, then next series of things, knowing, beliefs, and deception. Okay, so knowing, it's what can you possibly know? We start to deal with what's an opinion, what's a belief, and what do you absolutely know. Your kids will work on this at school, but you're going to work on it in a much larger sense at home to know, it leads into a whole bunch of different other lessons. But if if I take this pen and I stick it underneath the table and I say to the child, where is the pen? And they say it's under the table. Do you know that? Or do you just think that? Or do you believe that? Because eventually, when we get through knowing and we get into beliefs, we get into false beliefs. So that we have a whole series of lessons where you put a cereal box or something like that, and maybe it's their favorite kind of cereal, and we say to the child, what's in the box? And the child eventually is going to say, well, cereal is in the box. How do you know? Because I can see the label, and every time before that I've had the cereal, there's been cereal in the box, and we give them the box and we tell them to open it, and of course they open it and there's a toy inside. There's no cereal, to show them that just because previously we've seen that something happened here and it meant this and it was this, that doesn't mean that it always is. If we don't really have the visual on what's inside, we're believing that it's cereal in there. It's probably cereal in there, but it's a belief, and sometimes we have false beliefs. Now, why is this helpful? For when kids have flexibility issues and they get entrenched in a way of thinking. I can think of in particular when my son, there was a certain point when a kid was not nice to him at school and tripped him. And so my son loaded up, when somebody sticks their foot in front of me and trips me, that's them being mean. But as you know, it isn't always. Sometimes people make a mistake, and I needed for him to be able to get some flexibility of thinking. So we talked about, what do you know? What do you think? What do you believe? What's possible? What are our scenarios? Let's analyze the situation and come up with, if it happens again and again and again, and the person goes, oops, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to trip you, how likely is it that that's the truth? Or are they engaged in deception? You can't get to deception until you know knowing, beliefs, and deception. Now, the truth is that for all of these different things here on this wheel, there are lessons on both sides except for deception. There is no lesson to actually teach your child anything other than a white lie. They don't spend time teaching kids to lie. They do teach them how to do a white lie so that, like when you're playing a card game or something like that, and somebody says, I don't know, because Go Fish it wouldn't work, but you know what I mean? There are games that you play where you have to have a poker face, right? And not show that you have a certain something. So they teach them white lies for that. We all know in the autism community that when our kids tell their first lie, we are thrilled, right? Because it means that they get it and that they understand it. But it's especially important that they understand the hallmarks of when someone else is deceiving them. It helps to protect them. How about detecting sarcasm? I think that's a particular fun lesson to learn on. There are some lessons now. It used to be that there were no lessons about teaching them how to be sarcastic, but I think there's at least, there are a series of lessons now that teach them how to engage in figurative language, and sometimes that includes sarcasm. Then intentions, which will also help with deception, teaching them to understand what their intentions are, what somebody else's intentions. That was so important when we were teaching my son about, well, if somebody's foot gets stuck out and you get tripped, that's not, what was their intention? Did they mean to hurt you? Or that if they did, then that is them being not nice and it needs to be dealt with. But if somebody hurt you by accident because they stuck their foot out, they still need to apologize, but it's not something we need to call the police over, right? All of these different things, when you put them together, lead to our kids being able to not only negotiate through the world, but to be successful in relationships and not be taken advantage of. It's a fascinating set of lessons. Now, these lessons you can start on with someone, I think the earliest lesson you can start on with someone who's 14 months old with desires, and probably even a little bit earlier. But these are lessons that you can work on. All of these skills begin to emerge in a neurotypical 8-year-old before their 9th birthday, but as you can see, these are things that will not be perfected until someone is an adult and even beyond that. So you can be working on all of these things. You guys have written in and asked, what is the advanced cognition curriculum? Well, I want you to understand that for some of you who have kids who have progressed, already passed a lot of the material that's in skills, they have taken and created a specific curriculum for our kids that are high functioning and older. And it will include the cognition curriculum, the executive functions curriculum, the social skills curriculum that we went through the other day, and the adaptive curriculum. It has those 4. So it's literally like cutting skills in half and giving you the stuff that's appropriate for those kids that are high function. And the lessons are specifically for those kinds of kids. Now, if you are someone who has just a regular skills, excuse me, if you have a regular skills subscription, know that you have all of these lessons already. They've given them to you. But for the skills advanced cognition, they've cherry-picked them and given them to you to streamline them for your kids that are high functioning. I want to encourage you to go to skillsforautism.com. When you go there, you have the ability to look at all of skills if you want to. Or in the very first menu sheet, you can choose parents, because it says caregivers, teachers, and parents, practitioners, parents, and teachers. Click on the one that says parents. When you go there, you'll be given a drop-down menu. Click on the cognition, advanced cognition curriculum. When you go there, it tells you a lot about it, and at the bottom, it has a lovely little bar that you can click to go in. You can, if you put your credit card information in, you can have a 14-day period of time to look at it before they charge your credit card. Same thing with skills. You just don't need to click on advanced cognition curriculum to be able to try that for 14 days. I really want to encourage you, all of these, whether you do the advanced cognition curriculum or you do skills, the regular skills, the original skills, you'll get the assessment portions that come with it. So you won't be expected to know, what do I work on? I don't know whether to start with desires or senses or physical states. You'll be given the questions that go with it. So if you answer the questions about, can your child do this? Can your child do that? It then puts a pool of lessons together for you to choose from, for you to prioritize and say, okay, so it says I need to work on this lesson in desires. It says I need to work on this lesson in senses. They are coded by difficulty and by number. If you start with the earliest number, those are the ones that you can work through and take the higher number as you go so that you're advancing through the skill. So useful. You won't believe the difference that it can make. I love when you work with a child and you teach a child something and the light goes on and you see it and the child understands something. And when the light goes on with these cognition lessons, I will tell you that the generalization that happens, generalization is when they apply what they know to new circumstances that you've never taught. This curriculum kickstarts them to be able to see all kinds of things and language them together, fit them together, and think them through. It expands their world in ways that is so exciting. You will see a jump start when your kids start to get the things in this lesson. So check it out, Cognition Curriculum in Skills, whether you do the advanced cognition curriculum or you do skills, it's there in both of them. Check it out.